Welcome back, everyone, to the Burnout Club. This is the place where we explore burnout and success one expert and experiment at a time. I'm your host, Patrice, and today I am joined by Sarah Clifford. She's the co-founder and marketing director for the Otherhood Collective. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. So I tracked Sarah down and her co-founder because I thought what they were doing was so important. So why don't you just talk a little bit about who you are and what you created, because the Otherhood Collective is much needed, and I want everyone to understand what the organization is.
So the other collective is it's a community much like kind of what you're building here about finding a safe space for people to go to who have followed an untraditional path in parenthood, motherhood, fatherhood, whatever that might look like. Originally had started my friend Lisa and I both had our very different infertility journeys, and what that looked like for us was so different. But really the common thread we felt was that nobody talks about those uncomfortable conversations, and there's not really a place to go where you're kind of feel like you're bucketed into child free versus childless, which is choice versus circumstance. But really, what we felt was there needed to be a space where people could share their stories, no matter how they got to the place that they are in their journey in parenthood. So we're trying
Mhm.
to be very inclusive and not put people in a bucket between the two, and really could be adoptive parents, LGBT plus, step parents, men, really trying to open up the avenues for people to just have a safe space to go to and hear other people's stories so they don't feel so alone. So
I didn't actually appreciate how inclusive that was. That's such a broad section of people, but then you realize how needed the conversations are because it's affecting so many people and in many different ways and different aspects. So what was it like building the community? Like, how did it end up becoming what you sort of envisioned, or was it just free flowing?
yeah, we're still fairly new. We were actually just texting this morning with my partner Lisa, and we're about 4 months into kind of really launching everything.
Hmm.
And we really just started kind of just ourselves, and we figured we needed to put ourselves out there first before we really asked anybody else to do the same. And
Hmm.
that was hard for both Lisa and I, because while we have been friends for 25 years, we both didn't know a lot about each other and our different
Oh,
stories.
interesting.
And yeah, and we both our background, and Lisa still is in this, but our backgrounds are in TV producing. So we're used to being kind of behind the camera and the one
Hmm.
asking the questions and not really sharing and kind of just doing the, it's very hard even on these podcasts to just not be like, because I'm so
Yeah.
trained to not actually speak. But yeah, so we actually interviewed ourselves, which was
Hmm.
kind of the way we felt like if we put ourselves out there, then maybe people will see that and feel comfortable to do the same. And we're very, very fortunate where we had a lot of lovely women step up right in the beginning, from mainly our friend group to begin with, and a lot of my former clients who became friends. And we filmed some stuff in New York back in, gosh, it must have been March. That was like kind of the first four women that really stepped up, and we're so grateful for them. But they
Hmm.
range from very different circumstances. One is a mom. One, it was a woman who is choosing not to have children, single right now. A woman
Hmm.
who is married, but her and her husband chose not to have children, and one who was married, divorced, just bad timing. Just kind of
Hmm.
ran one of those things where you just kind of run out of time. And which is the unfortunate part about being a woman. It's such a short amount of time
Yeah.
that we have to kind of do everything. So, so yeah, so that's really, that started it. And then from there, we've just done organic outreach and people volunteering to step up and share their stories. Some are strangers, which is really cool. And some are still within our inner circle or in the communities in which we live that we've heard about it and have just wanted to be a part of it, which we think we're a little bit
Yeah.
different in that, where we're not sharing our own stories. We're minus the first thing that we did, but we're not the ones on camera, which a lot of the communities that you can see is that person going through their journey and they're sharing it themselves from a personal perspective, where we're just,
Mhm.
to your point, we're trying to share so many different types so that people
Yeah.
feel recognized in any sort of representation. So it's not just Lisa and I talking the entire time.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure that makes a even wider impact. So what's your, I guess, highest vision for the Otherhood Collective?
It sounds like simplistic, I guess, in one way, but also large in another way. But really, what Lisa and I wanted to do was have us just have a community where people felt welcome and they didn't feel alone and they felt like they could see another path through life that wasn't so judged. And that,
Hmm.
again, really opening up the space for people to talk about different things in their lives to make it feel more accessible, to not have a stigma against you. And of course, our
Hmm.
biggest, loftiest goal of all is change societal norms.
Yeah.
But the
But
reality
say it
is,
out loud. Yeah. I have to try to get
but
there.
yeah, we're so, step by step, we're that's our goal is just to, you know, embrace the otherhood and not make people feel othered, that we don't
Yeah.
have to use those terms anymore. We are able to really, have empathy with somebody else's situation and not feel like this is the path that we all have to follow. And if you don't follow that,
Hmm.
you're othered, and that's wrong because we
Yeah.
all live beautiful lives and fulfilled lives, no matter kind of what your family unit looks like. And it's just opening that conversation to, in short, just be a good person. Are you kind? Are you empathetic?
Yeah.
Are you giving back to the world, where you show up in a really great space? And what your family unit looks like from this nuclear family does not carry who you are as a person.
I love the reminder to keep it simple, right? Like if you clear your mind of any sort of societal pressure judgment, you're like, am I a good person today? Right? Like much easier to make it through the day like that than trying to think through what everyone else or what society at large is thinking or evaluating. So how was your personal journey to like being at the point where you could talk about your experience? Like, were you someone that I know you were private, let's say, because of your job and you're used to being behind camera, but did you need time or space to not talk about it for a while? Or if someone else had created the Otherhood, years ago, would you have been like open to talking and being in that community?
No, that's so interesting because I just said this to somebody yesterday, which is why
Hmm.
I'm just in awe of the people that have stepped up, because I like
Yeah.
fully, wholeheartedly don't feel like I would, because one, I don't love being on camera, but
Yeah.
it is for me, which was interesting. It's happened to be at a great time in my life to where I went through my journey about, gosh, now maybe 14 years ago.
Mm.
And I I knew where I was in my life and my career. Like I kind of had to make that choice mentally for me. So when you talk about giving the space, we had a lot of, if anybody ends up, watching our interview, you'll kind of hear this too. But I had a lot of family stuff happening at the time when we were also trying to have our own baby. And it just became a lot, like too much for me emotionally to handle. And
Hmm.
I just felt at that time like, okay, the odds of me going really deep into this fertility path and going through IVF and doing all that were not great to begin with. And
Mm.
there's still no real answers on why, health wise, there's nothing really medically that they can discover that was like, oh, this is why this is not happening for you. And that unknown was too much for me to handle, to also try and be there as a sister, as an aunt, as a
Hmm.
sister-in-law, as a daughter, for everything else that my husband and I had going on in our other lives. So we both made that kind of conscious decision, like there's reasons we're here, and maybe this isn't why we're here. We're here to help other people, and but we really never talked about it outside of just my husband and myself going through it. And so,
Mm.
unfortunately, in one way, it led to a lot of assumptions why we didn't have kids, and which to me it doesn't matter, but like they're just there, and a lot of them incorrect. And so you just kind of shut it down and you just like, I don't have kids, and you just move on, and that's about it.
Yeah.
But it was really hard, in my career at that time too, just to be the one at the office that didn't have the kids and be asked the questions. And I was in a lot of rooms where I was, kind of the face of our company. And so it's a lot of cocktail hours, happy hours, a lot of, mingling, small talk. And that first question that women always get is,
Mm.
well, how many kids do you have?
Yeah.
And I'm
Oh
not
my
going to
goodness.
say to somebody that I'm trying to do business with, go through my entire journey of why
Yeah.
I don't have kids. But,
Yeah. Nor should you have
uh,
to.
and so like all these things kept coming up, to be honest with you, in my career that frustrated me more than what was actually happening. Like even my friend group or my own community. Lisa, I ended up leaving the job that I was in. I was in this position for about 11 years at
Mhm.
a creative agency, and I just, I left that job for many reasons. But Lisa then had just kind of wrapped up her journey of what she was going through, and it was very, very difficult for her to reconcile her where she was at. And so timing is everything. She called me. I had just left my position at my job, and she's like, you're not doing anything. Come help me. Let's
Yeah.
do
Come
this
here.
thing together. Yeah.
Hmm.
Let's do this thing together. Let's talk about what this could look like so that, we can both share our stories, but then also put our professional skills to use in a way
Hmm.
that we know how. So long story short, that's kind of, again, I say this, I would never jump on and talk to a stranger and be on camera and talk about this. But what's really helped us and what we hear from a lot of people that do participate in it is that
Hmm.
it's very cathartic, very much
Yeah.
it's not like a therapy session, because please do not think that we are by any means in the
Yeah.
medical field. But it's a
Right.
moment to actually share a story in an open place that feels safe, and it feels like you're talking to a friend. But sometimes it's easier to say it to a stranger, and
Hmm.
you learn something from each one of these interviews that you're like, oh, that's a coping mechanism I can use, or a grief mechanism
Hmm.
I can use. And even today, watching some of these ones that we're working on now, you're like, oh my gosh, I'd never thought of it that way. We just
Yeah.
keep getting that, and we get that back to us too, like people that watch it, like, wow, it's really helping me reframe those questions that I maybe ask at a dinner party. And or, hey, I have 3 kids, but nobody knows about the 8 miscarriages I had to get to those 3 kids. And
Hmm.
it works both ways of just recognizing that there's a lot of unknown in people's lives, and just let's not take everything for face value.
Hmm. That's a good thing to keep in the back of your mind, right? There's so many unknowns because when you are in those situations, right, like the cocktail hours and all that, there are choices as to where you begin, and we can make better choices, I think, generally. It's a very good reminder. And I think you bring up something we didn't talk about yet, but it's almost like two distinct things that you're going through that journey that was not going how you wanted or anticipated, like the fertility journey. And then it's the kind of fact now that you don't have children and you're navigating in society where like that's just not what is perceived as the norm, right? So how do you feel you could have been supported better by those around you or even your workplace in either one of those scenarios?
Because what has come out since Lisa and I did our one-on-one interviews with each other, the amount of people that have come to me now and said, I had no idea that you were going through that. And honestly, I don't blame them or have any ill will towards that, because I didn't talk about it. So it's, to me, it's like
Hmm.
I appreciate them coming to me now. What I The hardest thing, and I don't know why this would be a bad thing anyway, and but there is a negative connotation to it. The biggest thing people assumed was I was so career driven that I chose not to have kids, and I was just focusing on my career, which isn't,
Hmm.
it isn't true. It can be actually both true. I was focusing very hard on my career and trying to have children at the same time.
Yeah.
But
Right.
it wasn't that I chose one or the other that I was going through. And I think that can sometimes be said with such a negative connotation, which I think is unfair
Mm-hmm.
for anybody to feel like less than because of the choices that you've made. For me,
Mm-hmm.
the biggest problem I faced in my job was that it was always assumed because I don't have kids that I have more time, and you can hear this all the time speaking with other people in, especially women in the workplace, because I don't think men are held to that. If men don't have kids, I don't think they're held to that same standard
Mm.
that all of a sudden men have extra time because they don't have kids. But really, it
Yeah.
becomes, oh well, you're missing half of your life basically because you don't have this mother. You're not having to be a mother to a child when you get home at night. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I did it to myself as well. I took on more work because I felt I could. I felt like my time personally wasn't as valuable to find places to fill that where I felt I did have a gap in time. I
Mm-hmm.
would start overfilling my plate with things, especially in the workplace, because I fell into that stereotype. I was like, okay, yeah, they're
Yeah.
right. I do have more time because I don't have to run home and do soccer pickup. I don't have to
Mm-hmm.
do, I do, by the way, I do get dinner on the table still every night.
Yeah.
but, but it's like, I don't have to care in people's minds, care for another human being, a child.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, part of a thing that I had to also reconcile for myself, that my time was valuable as well,
Yeah.
and don't take on that extra project, don't, because of this. So it really came to light in COVID, and I
Mm-hmm.
hate to like bring COVID back into the whole world again, but really that was
Yeah.
really eye-opening to me after X amount of years of like reflecting back and saying I took on so much because I had so much empathy for everybody that had a child at home
Yeah.
and the kids on the Zooms, and you're like, oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, don't you go. I got
Yeah.
this, bring this all to
Mm-hmm.
me because I can't imagine what you're dealing with right now in your home life of now all of a sudden everything is just turned upside down. And then
Yeah.
unfortunately it just stayed that way. And I never got out of that cycle of give it all to
Mm-hmm.
me, let me take this for you. And
Mm-hmm.
then became the expectation. So that was kind of in the career aspect, that's kind of where I realized after I left, I had to leave my job
Yeah.
to kind of like reset my boundaries and be like, all right,
Mm-hmm.
this isn't for you to take on just because you don't have a child,
Yeah.
and reset that whole thing. So
Mm-hmm. I'm so glad you said that because there probably are plenty of people that are in that scenario where they're still dealing with what they took on from COVID, right? Because like we're not that far away from it. If you haven't left your job, likely the tasks that you were given during that point in time are still on your plate. Do you have any advice or thoughts on how to maybe detangle that or conversations to have around that?
I hate to say this too, but it has to come from leadership in one way.
Mm-hmm.
And as a person in leadership, and at the time that I was, which is part of the problem, I was in leadership, what
Mm-hmm.
I tried to just do is change that for the people I work with. And
Mm-hmm.
I was just became, and people have different theories on this of like, you don't need to tell me where you're going in every 5 seconds. Like, I don't care. That's not nobody else's business. I'm a very transparent person. And to me, by me saying I'm leaving right now to go to the gym and I'll be back in an hour
Mm-hmm.
is trying to make space for somebody else to feel like they can say the same thing to me as
Yeah.
as their boss or whatever it might be, because I'm taking the time for myself. And if they see me as an example of
Mm-hmm.
taking that time for myself, like I'm like, even working on the Otherhood, my current company, and even my past company would have been more than happy to welcome this. But
Yeah.
I have this side thing that I'm doing, and I'm taking an hour to go do this podcast today.
Yeah.
And I get there's two sides to that of like over transparency, like they don't need to know your business versus, but I find it's for me and my leadership style, it's been effective to help open those doors for other people to have that conversation and realize that like your time is also valuable for the things that you need to get done outside of the workplace that fill your cup in different ways. And
Mm-hmm.
that's has to start from the top down.
Yeah.
And because you have to create that safe space for somebody to feel that way. And I know
Hmm.
people have say things about this, the next generation that doesn't, maybe is more free to talk about stuff, that kind of stuff already.
Hmm.
It's the next generation where I feel like with coming out of the COVID and being so isolated for so long, where that's going to maybe have another whiplash back to heads
Yeah.
down, getting my work done, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
We really don't know.
so yeah, but yeah, to untangle it from like, from any advice, it is just like, just reminder that your time is as valuable as anybody else's. If you're getting your work done and you're responsible and you're vocal about your boundaries from the get, I think that you're just allowing yourself to have that open conversation, and fighting for yourself and your time is really important. And that's one thing that's easier said than done. And
Yeah.
I'm still trying to get through that every day, even in my current position. But
Hmm.
I learned a lot of really great life lessons of moving on in my next career, of setting those boundaries up early as the interview process, just so I didn't fall into the same patterns again.
Yeah. I think it's almost 50-50% like for yourself so that you are like sticking true to what you actually want and also for them to know and like zero ambiguity. I am, yeah,
Yes.
I'm in the same camp. Now, I wanted to ask you, you have lived many different places in the world. Is that right? Like about 6 places. Did you find either concept or experience of otherhood was different abroad versus here?
I don't know necessarily. I think for me, in our research, I would say more than anything, in the UK, this movement has been seemingly to be going on for much longer than it has in the US,
Hmm.
of just this acceptance. There's a lot more people being vocal. I think that also has to do with certain laws that they have in place in Europe about parental leave.
Hmm.
They're definitely more open about, making sure that people have the time off, fertility treatments being included in benefits packages. And I think the
Hmm.
US is just kind of getting there. I mean, obviously, we have progression in different ways, and in both sides of it, but
Hmm.
I think that's where the United States falls behind in kind of recognizing time off for people that have a miscarriage. I mean, they're expected that you just go back, because then nobody's talking about it. You're not gonna like
Hmm.
go to my boss and say, I had a miscarriage yesterday, can I have time off? The amount of people, I mean, I know my close people in my circle have literally had a miscarriage and been gone back to work the next day. And like,
Yeah.
that's
I know people in the same
unbelievable.
boat. Yeah. It's so sad.
And how you're grieving that, and then to show up in the workplace and smile and get your job done.
Hmm.
But because it's, again, just not this open conversation in the United States, where I think in Europe in general, they're a little bit freer about that, those conversations happening,
Hmm.
even down to like to their practices and their benefits.
Yeah.
Um, I know somebody that works for a European company, and in her, which I thought was so incredibly smart, in her package, like when she was getting the offer, she was like, I need to be able to travel. If I have a baby and you're expecting me to travel, that needs to come with a care person. Like, either it's
Mm.
my husband, if that, or I'm bringing a nanny with me, but my child's coming with me. If these are the expectations, then I need the support to be able to do that. And if I need to go through fertility treatments, like, this is a child that's just a thought that might happen. And she's so forward thinking on this, and like, wow, we
Hmm.
need to hear more from people like you, that when you go through this, I guess, like, you
Yeah.
want, these are my requirements. And I think that's a little bit easier in Europe to have those conversations, because they are a bit
Hmm.
more progressive in that space.
Yeah. But if we don't start having the conversations, then, it's just delaying.
Nothing
Like the
changes.
initial time you hear that request, you're like, whoa, no, we've never done that. But then if you keep hearing it, someone has to sit down and have a meeting, right? Like, what are we going
Yep.
to do about
Yep.
this?
Yeah, if you want me that badly, here are the rules.
Yeah. Oh, man. So, what is the most exciting part to you about this journey?
When we set out to do this, our goal was to, if one person a day looks at our pages or looks at our stories and they either text us because a lot of still don't want to publicly comment, or
Hmm.
because again, it can be a very sensitive subject. If one person we know looked at it and they felt better about themselves or they
Hmm.
felt less alone, then we know that we've done our difference and we've made a difference in one person's lives that felt that maybe helped them get through a really hard time of whatever they're going through.
Hmm.
And the most exciting part for me is that we haven't barely scratched the surface on this, and the amount of response that we've had from whether again people in our inner circle or complete strangers reaching
Hmm.
out to us and just saying thank you.
Yeah.
And we have this one video on TikTok that like for us, like it was like, oh, I'm like, let me just start playing with TikTok and putting things out there. We're kind
Yeah.
of like trying all of our different platforms right now and like kind of seeing what's hitting where and getting
Hmm.
that kind of dialed in. And this one video is like, I think like 36,000 views.
Oh, wow.
And which like for us, we're like, it's not the number, but it's the
Yeah.
amount of people that have commented and been like, I feel seen. Like, and
Oh,
we have this
wow.
beautiful story about this older woman who was this amazing book publisher, and she's in her, gosh, she's in her 90s now, and that on YouTube, the amount of people
Hmm.
are like, it's so lovely to hear this woman's story
Yeah.
from her whole career journey to where she ended, and knowing that she is not alone. Because I think that's also like one of those false things where you don't have kids, who's going to take care of me? And so it's being able to show people's different stories, like
That is nice.
those different angles is been really amazing and exciting to see how we're hitting very different generations across so many different even places in the world, and to get that those reactions has been really positive, and we haven't really had any negative kind of you know whiplash by any means.
Hmm.
We weren't expecting to, but you just never know out there. But
Oh,
that's been
yeah.
like really exciting to see how many people we are touching, even if they're not publicly commenting. We
Hmm.
both get messages every day on thank you for doing
Oh.
this. I'm going through IVF right now and this is helpful. So
Hmm.
that's what we set out to do. So
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. And to instantly know that you're touching lives and doing the right thing and being impactful with the messages, that's awesome. Is there anything that through those messages, have people asked for anything specific for agenda or programs?
no.
That's
I'm like trying to think like, yeah, nothing. Just, if we get somebody that says, I'd love to participate, that's probably the biggest ask that we get,
hmm.
or be on a podcast, or would you mind chatting with us on whatever it might be in terms of just more of a personal relationship, but nothing of like, yeah, more just in solidarity. We hear you
Yeah.
and we feel the same, and how can we help? And we
Hmm.
do get a lot of those kind of like, let me share this with my friends. Like, do you have a form that we can fill out that I can share? And that's our biggest thing, is like the more participants we can get, the better,
Yeah.
to represent as many stories as possible. So
This is maybe more on the technical side, but can we just talk about like terminology and words? Because I feel like if you are in a, I guess perceived standard motherhood, fatherhood scenario, there could be some hesitance to talk about it or engage because you don't want to say the wrong thing. So is there
mhm.
any advice on what to say or what words to use or not use? If there's not, that's fine, but I think it helps to
Yeah,
ask the question.
I think it's a good question because it's something that we all struggle with. We actually, that was one of the, we call it there. We have a cross topical interview called Labels.
Hmm.
And it is very interesting of like, it's very personal how
Yeah.
people want to be called. So it's, for me, I don't even know what I say, to be honest with you. I think that's the takeaway, is there isn't a right, unfortunately, there's not a right term overall, because it's such a personal thing to each person's experience and
Yeah.
how they want to be represented.
Hmm.
And I think, and this was, we were talking about this yesterday, but this was interesting. It's like, you know, as long as you're trying and the questions or whatever it is coming from the place of empathy and respect,
Hmm.
I don't think it matters really. This is for me personally. I'm not going to speak for the world,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I know that a lot of people aren't coming at this with any sort of. If you know that the person's coming to you with no hatred or anything like that, like,
Hmm.
you know, if you have an opinion one way or the other, there's an opportunity to say, "Hey, I appreciate this, but this is, this is kind of how I feel about this situation," or I would prefer to be called child free because it's freeing to me that I made that choice. And
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like, how people are looking at it. Like, it's my personal preference of what I feel I fit into a category. But what Lisa and I are trying to do is kind of break down those labels and just be like, people can own their choices, and how they want
Hmm.
to be represented in the world should be acceptable for anybody.
Now, you are creating a welcoming, inviting place. What about before the Otherhood Collective? What was the most like empowering space that you were in? Does that kind of shape what you're creating now with the Otherhood Collective?
I was really been very fortunate in my career path to work alongside of a lot of really amazing people and women and creatives and clients. And in my previous role, by the end of it, I was the president of the company. And it
Mm.
was going to be one of those moments where when I was leaving, I was in charge of everything, but business development
Yeah.
and really, really building the clients from day one since I started there.
Hmm.
Clients that are still my friends from 11 years, 12 years almost now. And and this is also, we'll go back into chief as well. But what I found was what's real in these relationships and what is it about business. And
Mm.
that's kind of that was a really hard place for me to kind of separate from and be like,
Hmm.
okay, when I leave this position, who was there for the relationship and the
Oh,
friendship versus who was there for business.
yeah.
And I was very, very, very scared because I mean, it was just so many years of pouring that
Hmm.
into my life and being nourished by it, to be honest with you. Like,
Yeah.
my that was what I thrived off of in my job, was these relationships because they were so strong
Hmm.
and so much trust, and a lot of them women, but men as well.
Hmm.
And when you separate that out, it's like, okay, now it was almost like, okay, who in the divorce, who wins? It's
Yeah.
like, I was also in chief at the time too. And a lot of those kind of like, all right, we're going to be in this group. And then if I'm not in this president position anymore, am I still part of that kind of culture
Yeah.
of, chief and all that? And how are they going to accept me? And so it was just
Hmm.
all this stuff. And when I did finally leave, I was just blown away by the support that I not only had from my clients, who of course had affected their business with me leaving,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
my colleagues that were so supportive, and even strangers in our chief WhatsApp group that were
Like
commenting on
me.
my LinkedIn and yeah, for reals, showing up and saying congrats, like you did the right thing for you, and
Hmm.
what a career you've had at that company, and we can't wait to see what's next. It gave me, I felt so I'm like, feel like I'm gonna cry, which I don't
Oh,
usually do, but
yeah.
it just was like, wow, people actually, that was authentic. Those
Hmm.
relationships were so authentic to me. And I thought that they were, but when you separate the business out, you just never know.
Yeah.
And that kind of gave me the courage to do what we are doing with the Otherhood, because I don't think I would have felt as confident if I didn't know didn't have so many people backing me for being just me
Hmm.
and not being related to my career, my company. And a lot of the people that you see in those stories are some former clients and have turned friends, chief members.
Hmm.
And it's just been really, I'd say that was one of the most empowering things that I got, was that reception of leaving that position and still having that community be so strong and still is to
Mhm.
this day.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us question or, struggle with the identity and the relationships outside of what your role is, especially when you've achieved so much and you've been in a place for so long, right? Like what exists outside of that same
Yeah.
context. Yeah. Because I don't want to wrap myself up too much in that role and that title and what that means for my life overall. So very good reminder there. I agree that I've been surprised at the support. I'm not doing the same thing that you are, but just to be in spaces where you are really supported, I've been surprised. So, and that makes me very hopeful for the future that people have gone out of their way to be supportive or say kind words, whether it's with the podcast or something else, when they really did not need to. And I don't know if I
Yes.
used
Yeah.
to experience that at all. uh,
I 100% agree. And I think it has been even just walking down the street, sometimes somebody will randomly throw out a compliment and I don't
mm,
feel like that. And I try and do it too. Like
yeah,
if you see something, like you say something, it's like,
yeah,
oh, if you can think something in your head, like, oh, that woman's dress is so pretty, like tell her.
yeah,
Like why not? Why make that
yeah.
person's day? Why not reach out and do the kindness and like, oh, that wow, she's so chic,
Hmm.
or well, I like your dog, or whatever it
Yeah.
might be. It's just like so some of those things you have your internal monologue about.
Hmm.
I think reaching out and telling the person that is so important, and it can really change somebody's day and maybe even their life because you don't know what
Yeah.
is happening and
Hmm.
there's always that like, oh, I'm not as good as that person because of this. And that's just like, no, we all have our insecurities and being able to recognize the fact that I think you're always going to think somebody has something else that you don't have, but
Hmm.
realizing that they're thinking, that old tale as old as time kind of thing. And just like, if we could be more vocal about the positive things
Hmm.
that you see in somebody unsolicited is, I think is just a kindness for everybody and can really help somebody get through a day that they might be really struggling in.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love doing that. And hopefully everyone do that today at some point, right? Make it a mission if you're not doing it every day. But another question I always love is where do you go or what do you do when you really want to have fun? Like something enjoyable. How do you really revitalize yourself? Like I just want to explore every single idea that I can with how to have fun and enjoy myself. What is your suggestion?
Well, for me, I love to travel. So for me, it's just I just get energized off of the travel. I
Yeah.
love to learn about in my former career, I was a journalist, and so I
Hmm.
think that's where that curiosity sparks from, and I think that's where kind of this otherhood all kind of comes from as well. It's just like
Hmm.
just learning about other people, their cultures, how they do things, and taking those learnings back, and just
Hmm.
really, I just get so inspired. Like, and I really like one of those people that actually really thrives off of other people's energies.
Mm.
I get technically I'm an introvert, but I love to just go out and hear and listen to see other people's culture, what they're doing.
Yeah.
I'm like one of those people that really loves a conference.
Yeah. That's great.
Not because I want to like, do a panel or anything, but like I just, just meeting people from like so many different parts of the world are coming together and
Yeah.
just and hearing what they do and what their journeys have been in careers or, whatever they want to share. And usually those conferences are not happening where I live. So you get the travel on top of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just get re-energized and I get new ideas and it
Hmm.
helps open my minds up to other things that are happening in the world that outside of my bubble and outside of my friend group. And that's really just like always just kind of connecting with new people is what really drives me, which I think is why some of that the work stuff of what I've been doing has always been kind of surrounded by people and being in front and really helping to problem solve and think through solutions with people that just really energizes me. And I think you get a lot of that when you kind of go out in the world and see what other people are doing and have those thoughtful conversations.
Yeah. You're so right. And You had sent me a challenge to do. So for all of you listeners at home, Sarah picked to reach out to a colleague or friend, not to ask for something, but simply to check on how they're doing and notice how connection itself can be the antidote to burnout. So do you want to say anything more about that challenge?
For me, I think that's one of my random superpowers. I didn't realize I was doing it until
Mm,
so many people would come back to me and say they might have had something going on in their life I didn't even know about it. But it is, again, back to kind of what gives me my energy.
Yeah.
It is people. And sometimes I'll just be like, oh, thinking about somebody. I'm thinking about them, like I was kind of alluding to. I'm like, oh, let me just send them a text and see what they're up to and just say hi.
Yeah.
And I think that's that is just knowing that you're being thought of, I
that is
think
nice.
is nice. You're like,
Hmm.
oh, but like it doesn't have to say anything. You just be like, oh. And I
Yeah.
think back to the business part of it, it is because my career was so based on like business relationships and what are you getting out of this and the negotiation and like how are we
Hmm.
sometimes it just isn't about that. And to make sure that people know it's authentic and you actually
Mm,
care about them in a way that's outside of the day to day grind. And
Yeah.
that's kind of it. And for me, just like that random, oh, wow, I haven't heard from that person in a while. That is nice. I think people get scared also if you haven't heard from somebody in a while or you haven't reached out in a while, like, oh, it's going to be this long conversation and
Yeah.
we're in a day and age where that's not doesn't have to be a phone call anymore, where
yeah.
you don't feel like, oh gosh, if I reach out, it's going to be a 30-minute phone call and I don't
Yeah.
have the time for that. It could be an email, it could be a text, just as super simple. It could be send them a meme on Instagram, whatever,
Yeah.
it's just like, hey, this saw
That
this thought
works.
of you, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're in a day where some of this stuff can be, where, oh, there's not as much in real life experiences because of technology, but
Hmm.
this is a place where technology actually is very helpful and can be when people just don't send a simple thank you on things like it's so easy now. Like you just 10
Just type
seconds.
thank you. Yeah.
Just yeah. You don't have to type it anymore.
Oh,
And that to me, I think is like, wow, when we have all these tools that we can use to have a better connection with people, just using them in for the positive.
yeah. Yeah. I think that sums it all up, right? Just about connection. And this has been great getting to understand your story and all about the Otherhood Collective. Is there anything that you want to leave the listeners with?
It sounds so cliche, but it is. It's just you just don't know what people are going through behind the scenes, whether that's
Hmm.
in your work world or personal lives, a server at a restaurant,
Hmm.
and just really trying to have that empathetic mindset when you walk into a situation and think how you might feel if whatever might be going on in your day, how somebody might react to something and maybe isn't always so personal, but making sure you are kind of doing that check in with your friends and family and really making sure that you feel like you're showing up in a way that's positive. And there's a lot of good takeaways, but overall, just treat people kindly, which seems so basic, but
But
that's how I feel.
yeah, there's still a reason why it has to be said because it doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
So this is your reminder. Tell somebody else. Be kind today. Make sure you recognize you don't know what's going on behind anyone's facial expressions. So be kind. I will. I promise. And to all the listeners, thank you. Remember to review and like and subscribe. And check out the Otherhood Collective and please support them in what they're doing. Sarah, your mission is fantastic. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so nice to see you again.